Entrepreneurship plays a significant role in the economic development of a country. The youth is more creative and innovative these days, and especially after COVID-19 situation, they are more interested in creating jobs by setting up the enterprises rather than doing jobs. The underserved do not include people who are being discriminated on the basis of caste, color, or race, but it also includes people who were deprived of their jobs or they were forced to shut down their businesses in the COVID scenario. Hi everyone, this is Fawad.
And I'm Salga Qureshi.
And we welcome you to the most exciting live show Qtrix that is brought to you by ILMA University in collaboration with Rotary International 3271, powered by Numan Group of Companies.
Well, Qtrix aims to bring world top-notch CEOs, presidents, directors, chancellors, vice chancellors, rectors, researchers from academia and industry of developed countries in front to speak out hot-button issues related to quality trends and new directions in post-COVID-19 digitech world. Ladies and gentlemen, the topic of today's show is sustainability and the future of work and entrepreneurship for the underserved. With us today is Joanne Rolle, Dean Business School at Medgar College, the City University, New York. Before starting our conversation with her, let's see her short profile video.
Joanne Rolle, PhD, is the Dean of the School of Business at Medgar College. Throughout the last 2 decades, Dean Rolle has been a results-oriented, collaborative, and accomplished executive in C-level positions in both private and public institutions. She has developed teams that deliver new programs, increase funding sources and improve brand recognition. In 2015, the Network Journal recognized Dean Rolle as one of the 25 influential African American women in business. Dean Rolle has extensive executive leadership experience in higher education, corporate and federal government operations. Her background includes working in multiple federal agencies, Harvard, Hampton and other academic institutions, IBM and consulting. In academic institutions, she has been responsible for academic leadership, academic programs, and student affairs. She has launched multiple undergraduate and graduate degree programs. As an economist, she has taught courses in economics and entrepreneurship. Her areas of expertise include urban economics, human resources, and entrepreneurship. At Medgar College, under the leadership and support of President Rudy Crew and Provost Augustino Crick, Dean Rolle launched the Entrepreneurship and Experiential Learning Lab, EEL, in the fall of 2015. Since the EEL launch, Medgar College teams have studied entrepreneurship in 10 countries, published in excess of 10 papers, initiated 4 international agreements and in 2016 coached the first woman to win the CUNY-wide Smart Pitch competition. Dean Rolle is sought after as an international keynote speaker on entrepreneurship and economic development. Dean Rolle was one of the first African American women in the country to earn a PhD in economics awarded by Howard University, Washington, D.C. She also holds a MA in economics, Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville, Illinois and BBA in management, Economics University of Miami. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Joanne Rolle.
Thank you for being with us in the show, and it is really an honor for us to welcome you here at Qtrix. And how do you feel about the show?
Thank you. I am very honored to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me, and I'm humbled by that introduction. Thank you.
Hello, John. And let me tell you the very first thing of the show in the beginning, that you are looking really pretty.
Thank you. Very old girl says thank you.
God bless you. All right. So starting with my first question with you, John, is like, who are underserved?
Okay, I'm very glad that you asked that question. You know, the underserved traditionally has had a meaning related to those in the bottom of the pyramid. Many of you have heard of the work of the bottom of the pyramid, but COVID has changed our perspective. There are many who were in middle class and above middle class that because of COVID, their organizations, their corporations, their small businesses shut down and they became unemployed. Some of them have had savings, but they are underserved because they are looking for work. They're looking to retool and upskill so that they can have some of the many jobs that are available. So in my mind, the underserved is changing. The underserved now means those who are looking for but have not been able to access the lifestyle that they once had and are willing to work to find it. And so we find that a lot of programs are now being developed across the world to help those who once had jobs and were employed to regain or find new work. So the meaning of underserved, I think, is shifting and is becoming broader.
That is really informative, Joan. Actually, the topic speaks about the sustainability and the future of work and entrepreneurship for the underserved. And you have very rightly pointed out that now the definition of underserved has changed. It not only includes those people who are being discriminated on the basis of caste, color, or creed, but now they also include those people who were deprived of their jobs and businesses, unfortunately, due to COVID-19 scenario. And what I understand from this part is that if we focus on the underserved people, and if we help them in setting up the new enterprises or start their businesses again, the gap that we had due to COVID-19 will be minimized and we'll be able to boost the economy faster. So moving forward, John, another thing that comes into my mind is that youth generally does not like to follow the traditional jobs now, after especially the COVID-19 situation. And what I think is entrepreneurship is an alternative to youth for contributing to the economy by setting up the new enterprises and creating jobs. So, how do you connect the underserved with entrepreneurship, especially the young entrepreneurship?
Great question. So the fastest growing segment in many economies is the youth. I mean, the youth population is significant in many areas of the world. And we have been doing across the world a lot of education and training of youth that had not had those opportunities before. So we've increased the supply of higher ed and secondary ed youth. But what we're finding is they're not the same labor force that we were 20 years ago, 30 years ago. With their new education and new training, they have higher and different kind of expectations. And so as we are working with them in the universities, as we are working with them in industries, we find, I can just say, I find in the work that we have done, many of them are more social conscious. So let me just give you an example at my institution, Medgar College City University of New York. When we started looking at entrepreneurship, it was a push from the students that they wanted us to look at social entrepreneurship. They wanted to be able to build businesses and go into businesses that were, they could go back to their communities and help their communities, provide jobs in their communities, become job creators in those communities that they came from. Why? Because they could see the need. They could see that their parents were struggling. They could see that their grandparents were struggling, and they didn't want to leave them. They wanted to come back and help them. And what they understood is that if they only got a job, they could only help their own families. But if they created a business, that they could help others. And so I think the youth have different kinds of eyes that, and they're tech savvy. They know that the technology is driving a lot of this change in industry, and they grew up many of them grew up with the technology. So it's not as big a shift for them as for some of us to become involved and engaged and to want to become a part of building businesses. Because many of them just don't want to accept not having a job and having skills and waiting for a job to come along. So I believe in the youth. I just think that we have to support them, find networks, develop partnerships with industry so that we can create a future that was not there in the past.
And I think I must add to John here that when we are working for someone, that means that work is going to end at some point. We are going to get retired when we are, employee at some place. But when we have the business, then the whole of people, our families can have that earnings for the years. So I think this is like the important thing for the entrepreneurs. Like they are focusing over that point that they want to feed their families like for longer, not for the limited time period. So
Excellent point. Excellent point.
And John, what I believe is that this entrepreneurship helps in reducing the inequality of human capital in the enterprises as well. Because generally, when we are working for large organizations or the matured organizations, we generally face inequalities with respect to different individuals. So by setting up new enterprises, this factor is also minimized, and the entire focus of the team is to develop the business and to make it profitable. So this is another point that we see as a benefit of entrepreneurship.
all right.
I agree.
Moving towards our next question is like, what is the bootstrapping technique in business, and why this strategy is important for sustainability and the future of work and entrepreneurship for the underserved?
Okay, so typically when you start a business, there isn't a lot of investment in your business. It comes from friends, families, and yourself. And typically, it doesn't take as much as it used to take because land, labor, and capital, all of those have become fluid with this new technology, and you need a lot less of all of the factors of production. However, bootstrapping itself is you start where you are. You start with what you have. You don't wait for the government. You don't wait for the corporations. You don't wait for someone to give you. You start with the knowledge base that you have. You start with the investment that you have, and you build up. You get experience, and then you grow your business. The challenge is, many people start businesses. That typically isn't where we have the problem. The problem is in scale. They have the small business. I'll give you Zanzibar as a case that I'm working on now. The women and the youth, they develop cooperatives where they have many businesses that support each other. The problem is when those large hotels make a large order, they can't fill it because they don't have ovens and stoves wide enough or big enough to handle the large orders. And so they lose that. But if the orders stay small, they can manage that. So the issue is, how do you help them when they need to scale up, when they've developed the experience at the smaller business level and want to develop more, to do exports and to expand worldwide? How do you help them scale? So yes, bootstrap is starting from where you are. No more excuses, no more waiting. Start from where you are and build up to where you want to go.
But John, what I think is that bootstrapping requires a second phase, and that phase is to get the funding from external sources. But what we witness generally is that young businesses generally encounter problem in managing their credibility, in explaining their credibility to the financial institutions for getting, or to the investors for getting funds to expand their businesses. So this is another issue that young entrepreneurs generally face, because for expanding your business, you require a lot of funds. And when we speak about bootstrapping, it's like to invest the initial capital by the owner, whatever he or she has, to invest that capital and to start the business on a minimum scale. But after 1 year or 2 year, when you decide to expand the business, you need funds, and for that, because of lack of credibility, you are deprived of the funds. So this is another challenge that entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs, are facing. Although they have a lot of talent to expand their business, but this is an issue.
I think you hit on a point. The entrepreneur has to get very good at storytelling, telling their own story. I mean, in the final analysis, someone is going to look at your history, but they will hear your story first. And if you don't have a good story, they will never be able to see your business, to invest in your business.
Okay.
So that was a very good point that you had. You know, eventually to grow the business, you're going to need funds that you don't have. And so you have to convince others to invest in your business and develop a strategy of how to make that work. Yes, very good point.
Convincing the financiers would be just a game of 5 minutes or the game of 5 years. That depends like how you are convincing to the financer. So I have a linked question with that. The underserved face a difficult time accessing financing, and how this issue can be addressed.
Okay, so I was working with a group yesterday and talking about the very same issue. At some point in time, finances become the bottleneck. And so one of the things that they're talking about is venture funds, funds that are dedicated solely to helping these small businesses bootstrap. You know, venture financiers are not typically interested in startups and small businesses for different reasons, but many social impact funds are starting to evolve and saying, well, we want to return on our investment, but we also want to make a social impact. And so our target is going to be youth businesses, or our target is going to be women businesses, or our target is going to be minority Black-owned businesses. And irrespective of the rate that we earn in our other funds, we're going to make special circumstances so that we can give more funds to this market that we believe needs it to sustain themselves. And yesterday they were talking about African businesses and having special funds to help some of the African businesses be more sustainable. And to address that issue that I just mentioned, the scale issue, you know, once they get a certain level and they need to borrow borrow a grant or whatever the finance mechanism to get more of an infusion of capital into their business, they go to third parties and they tell their story. And based on a little bit of their history and their stories, we are hoping to have more fiscal tools that will support these businesses as they come to market.
John, would you like to highlight about a very good book that is under publication by yourself, and that relates to the topic of today's show as well? So how did you reach to this title of the book, and what made you to work on this project? And because this is a very important area, underserved, and their relation with the entrepreneurship and the young entrepreneurship. And what I studied is that you did a lot of research on South African countries, the way they are trying to boost up their economy by promoting these young entrepreneurs. So this is something that needs to be learned by other developing countries as well, so that they can also boost up their economy. So how did you reach to this title of the book?
Okay, so I'm not taking credit all by myself. I work with colleagues around the world. About 6 years ago, we did 2 conferences. One was on social entrepreneurship, and one was on one was on social entrepreneurship, and one was on corporate social responsibility. And we had colleagues from the Caribbean. We had colleagues, well, let me just specifically say, we had colleagues from Jamaica, Chile, Kenya. And what we didn't want to stop our our research and our work together at that conference. So from that time, I believe that was 2016, we talked about the issues and the challenges we were having as educators in entrepreneurship and in business schools. And even in Chile at the PhD level, the students were having problems getting placed in country. Now they could get a job outside of Chile, but they didn't want to go outside of Chile. There were difficulty getting teaching jobs because, as you know, the decline in enrollment, the decline in demand for higher ed professors. So we continued to work and publish in the area. And what I found, or what we found, was the problems and issues we were having were not just in our home countries or our home, in my case, in New York. They were around the world. And so we started publishing and it evolved. Some of the data just started becoming available. I think it was 2018, where we could look at the disparity in income between countries. And even though you might look at Russia and you might look at the US and say they are two very different countries, when we come to the disparity in income, those two countries have about the same performance rate. It's about 50% of the folks in the US and 50% of the folks in Russia have about the same amount of income, meaning that 10% of the population in those countries are controlling the majority of the income. And as we looked at the data across the world, the income gap was dismal. And so we started doing more work on how to change it through entrepreneurship, where we looked at where the highest wealth was. It came through entrepreneurship. Of course, there's still some old money out there, but you look at the Jeff Bezos of the world, you look at the Bill Gates of they grew up in our generation. They created a lot of wealth for themselves and other folks. So our challenge was not to be jealous of some of the work, but how can we get more at the bottom of the pyramid and the middle of the pyramid to have the same kind of experience that they had? So that's the genesis of that work, and it evolved into our first conference paper about 2 years ago called The Future of Work and Entrepreneurship. And then we said, well, why just us? It was 6 or 7 of us. Why not expand the knowledge by asking the perspective of other scholars? And that's how The Future of Work and Entrepreneurship. And I will tell you, after that book was published, very shortly after that, another publisher came and asked us to not just look at the future of work and entrepreneurship because they thought it was a good body of work, but to expand it to sustainability. And so when we did the call for chapters, we were amazed that we got 60, almost 70 responses, and we only really have a place in the book for 15 chapters, 45 full chapters, which need to go through the review process. And so what that tells me is that a lot of people in this space, the future of workspace, they are speaking for the underserved, but not having been a part of the underserved. So what we are seeing is those who have been a part of the underserved, much like the youth who are coming from their community that say we want to be a part of the solution. We have many dynamic voices that are coming out now to speak about the future of work and the underserved because they see it through a different lens, not one that is colored by someone else. And I'm going to stop because you know I could go on and on.
We would love to listen you like that longer, but looking at the time, I'm moving forward. All right, the establishment of small, medium, and micro enterprises leads to sustainable entrepreneurship development. What is your opinion on that?
Okay, so in many countries around the world, the ones that were hardest hit was the small and medium enterprises because they did not have the capital to sustain a 6-month or 1-year shutdown with no revenues. And many of them went as long as they could, and then they had to reinvent themselves. You know, it was a crisis that turned into an opportunity. You know, Many of them had never done anything digital or anything remote or virtual, but they found that their customers couldn't get to them because there was no more brick and mortar, and they had to reinvent themselves. Most places around the world, small and medium enterprises are the heart and soul of the economy. Yesterday in the presentation by the UNDP, they said in Africa, the small and medium enterprises produce 60% of the GDP. So we have to find a way to help those businesses reinvent themselves that were not able to sustain the shock, the socioeconomic shock of the pandemic. You know, it started happening slowly, but many of those businesses are coming back now in different forms. They need networks, they need infrastructure, they need support from both the private and the public sector. What we found, and I was talking to you earlier, is that many of the large corporations, Amazon being one of them, but Google and Microsoft, there's a worldwide shortage of supply of workers to fill this new knowledge gap that they need. And so they are working with partners. I can tell you the large corporations are working with the small and medium-sized businesses to help develop the talent that is needed. Of course, they want some of that talent to flow back to the large corporations, but they understand that their suppliers don't have workers, and they're trying to help them fill those gaps. So yes, small and medium enterprises are very important. I believe that the pandemic has taught us that they are resilient. Many of them are very resilient. They refuse to go away, and they're coming back in different, more adaptable forms to this new economy, this new workforce, this new future of work that we will be seeing. And I don't ever believe we'll go back to what we had before. Many people say go back to normal. I believe that the new workforce and the new demands of business will take us to a future that we have not seen.
John, I see a problem. The problem is that when we decide to establish a startup or a kickstart project, there are incubators established in every country, and they spend a lot of money in nurturing those new projects and in starting those projects, and because they promote creativity and innovative ideas. But when we talk about young entrepreneurs who have managed to establish their small businesses by using bootstrap technique, and as far as their nurturing is concerned, there is no institution, we hardly find any institution to nurture those young enterprises. So I don't understand why we are not focusing, because we are spending millions of dollars in establishing startups, but we are not being able to finance a reasonable amount to young enterprises. So how would this gap be eliminated?
I think the challenge is, you know, the sector that does the investment, they have criteria that has not changed significantly. So it's difficult for those young entrepreneurs to meet the old criteria. I think if we are to be successful in the future, the criteria for investment is going to need to change. And I think it will, as these young entrepreneurs do their proof of concept, meaning that even given the low level of funds, even given their lack of experience, and as they become more successful, you know, investors and businesses follow success and they follow the money. So I believe as more of them, by bootstrapping and other means, become successful, we're going to draw attention to it. When I say we, I mean that sector, that investment sector, that sector that has the funding. And there's a lot of different accelerators going on now, places where they are looking for young talent to help support them, but they're not looking always in the right places and not at the right people. And so as by sheer, I mentioned resilience. A lot of the folks in the bottom of the pyramid and a lot of the folks who have lost their jobs, they truly are persistent and resilient. And I think that's an asset that is going to play out in the sustainability of some of the work that, not everybody is going to sustain those businesses, we know that. But those that are sustained, I believe they're going to give us a roadmap to a new way to make business work. I don't know that we have the roadmap right now, but we are building it, and they are helping us to build it because they are saying no to the old ways. They're saying no to just doing what someone else wants them to do. They're saying no to not helping their communities because they want to help their communities. So we haven't seen it yet, but I believe it is playing out in the future of work.
And I think, John, the ideas that young minds have.
I'm sorry, I apologize.
No,
what was the question?
The question is like connecting to the things that you said right now. The ideas that young minds have these days, and even the generations that are going to be produced after 20 years, they would be also having different ideas. So due to the roadmap that they are not given, their ideas are, having, at the backstage, but they're not being promoted the way they used to be. And the thing that the ideas that we had, or the businesses that we had back to 5 years, those businesses have, lot of audiences and, a good number today because of the opportunity that this COVID has created. So we cannot, refuse and say no to the new ideas, but we need to create a certain roadmap, as you said, because we need their brains, we need their solutions, because they are keen to, they're keen observers of the market and the society today. So yes, good. There needs to be a certain criteria for that.
And John, I also studied your research, and you are very right in that research. And as you said, that the role of government policy is also very important in promoting these young entrepreneurs, because the fiscal policies, the monetary policies, the taxation policies, because generally governments extend rebates, discounts, subsidies to already established industries. But there should be a policy by the government for every country to promote these young entrepreneurs. Because if the young entrepreneurs are successful, they will add to the exports of the country, whether they produce goods or they produce services, but they will add value to the exports and they will bring foreign reserves to the country. So by creating more policies to extend a helping hand to young entrepreneurs on the government level, will help these young entrepreneurs to establish good businesses, I guess.
Yes, I agree. I think the youth are important, but as I mentioned earlier before, multi-generational. I mean, the elderly have wisdom and knowledge in areas that the youth don't have. So if you combine along that work chain, that value chain of the youth, those in the middle and those at the end of the work, you will have a powerful workforce. Leave no one behind, even the elders, because they still have the mental dexterity. Physically, they may fade, but they have some experience that the youth can integrate into some of those solutions. So yes, the youth is important, but I also believe in the older workers being a part of that solution, not necessarily driving it anymore like they once did, but continuing to be a part and having some of that insight. Accessibility to that insight.
And you know, John, the beauty of entrepreneurship is that it is having a self-adjustment factor. On one side, it deprives of people from their businesses or jobs. So they come into the category of underserved. And on the other hand, they find out new opportunities. They find out new innovative ideas. And so they start or adjust their enterprises onto that roadmap. So on one side, they produce underserved, and on the other side, they produce new businesses. So this is also a positive side of the entrepreneurship and an opportunity for underserved to excel well, I guess.
I agree. I absolutely agree. You know, the
So,
one thing that I really like about entrepreneurship is there, you know, there are some barriers to entry, but
yes,
if you really want to get involved, one thing they taught me in IBM is find a need and fill it. I mean, so you are looking throughout your community, you're looking throughout your world. What are some gaps that you see? How can you fill those gaps? How can you bring to market a service that's not there? How can you bring to market a product that's not there or needs to be revamped, revised? There's so many points of entry in entrepreneurship, unlike some other fields. So I am looking forward to the youth embracing entrepreneurship and developing their communities and their world, really.
All right, John. As like during the COVID-19 pandemic, young entrepreneurs have digitized their businesses to reduce their risk, like through frontier technologies such as blockchain, big data, and artificial intelligence. So, what do you have to say about it? How they have reduced their risk by digitizing their business?
Well, yeah, for those who got shut down and couldn't digitize their business, they lost market and they lost market share. And so
Yes.
I think those who are more, here's that word again, resilient, found a way to have a presence without having a physical space. And once they found that it was cost effective, many of them have not renewed their leases. Many of them have not gone back into those buildings, causing a different kind of issue for the real estate market. In downtown New York, we find that a lot of folks just left. And when I say that, I'm talking about businesses. And so in the real estate market, they're trying to find, again, how to reinvent themselves to become relevant because people are not quite back in all the buildings again. In fact, some of the corporations are trying to get people to come back to work in the buildings because the local economy has suffered so much. The restaurants, those are the vendors who are around and support the businesses during the daytime. So not that the corporations believe they can't work, because they've shown that they can work in a hybrid or a remote environment, but it has a tremendous impact on the local economy when people are not in the buildings. So yes, those who adapted, and honestly, this is not the last COVID, and I say that not in a health crisis, but we will have other crises in the future. Might not be COVID, but it'll be something else. Whatever the crisis is, the resilient entrepreneurs and businesses and corporations will have to learn what it takes to adapt to this new crisis. So this is I think, even though it was a tremendous loss of life and social, I think what we understand now as a world is that as these things happen, we have to, government, business, academic institutions, we all have to learn how to work together to solve our common problem. COVID was a common foe, and we all came together and figured it out. At least partially figured it out. I hear there's a new strand now. But it's not as daunting as it was in the beginning when it came and we had to shut everything down in terms of physical space, and within weeks and months, many organizations were live and back online. So, you know, we may not like what has happened, but it has happened worldwide, and we have been able to respond worldwide. And I think we'll have to continue to reinvent ourselves. Businesses will have to continue to reinvent themselves as the need changes. We just have to get used to it and do it.
as just you said, we can adopt another crisis other than this COVID, and we are ready for it. And we are, we have completely molded ourselves according to that, as we are living in the new normal world.
Yes.
No, John, one other thing is that the role of higher education institutions, the universities, is very important in the current scenario because the universities are producing graduates, but they are focusing on getting good employment for the graduates. So, by starting new enterprises, this problem is being solved. Another thing is that uh, there are other challenges associated with the entrepreneurship. Uh, Besides getting funding from the financial institutions, like declining customer demands, like distribution disruptions, supply chain disruptions, and there are various other things associated with the entrepreneurship after COVID-19. And what I believe is that the curriculum needs to be uh, rejuvenated. Like students studying business administration, now they also need to understand how can they shift their businesses or shift their strategies that should have a strength of IT or digital technology, because students who are studying businesses, they are less focusing on digital technology, or vice versa. Students who are studying computer sciences, they are not focusing on business strategies. But this COVID has proved that if you want to be a successful businessman or an entrepreneur, you need to have a balance of business studies as well as the digital studies. So this is a point that universities need to focus on while preparing the graduates. What do you think is the role of university besides this? What do you say about this point?
Well, you bring up a very, very valid and important point. Universities have been operating the same way in the same mode for decades and years. I think what COVID has shown us is that if we're going to keep pace with the demands of industry for the workforce that we are producing, we've got to change. And the curriculum needs to change, but how do you change it? The faculty have not been through a COVID crisis before, have not been through the pace in which technology is shifting. What I think is needed is improved partnerships between government and private sector and the university. How will we know what the industries need unless they share what's going on in their laboratories with our faculty, with our students? By the time you get to an internship, it's too late. It needs to be integrated in the curriculum, in the classes, what is going on in industry, have the industries work with the curriculum changes that are needed, have them guest lecture, have the students go into the corporations, go into the labs. We need to get better at merging the academy who's producing the workforce and the industry that needs the workforce and the government that needs the business, the growth in GDP. All three stakeholders, and there's more than that, but all of the stakeholders need to come closer together in a dynamic solution. You know, the curriculum we have now is static. Once it gets through the governance process and comes out there, it's there and it rarely changes. What we have found in COVID is that our students, in order to be career ready and market ready, they need to change faster than our curriculum. So what I propose is if you can't change the curriculum fast enough, do co-curricular activities. Do co-curricular activities with the industry, the government, until you can bring along your brethren and sisters in the academy who, you know, we as a group don't like to change. So, but change is inevitable. It has to come from the students we serve and the community we serve. And so those of us who are leaders and champions of change have to be that in our institutions. And I believe that's the only way that we're going to really support the community and the students. Not everyone is going to go, but you need a core group to move the academy in the direction it needs to go.
And John, another thing that comes into my mind is that this is the right time to work on case studies because this COVID has given a lot of experience to young entrepreneurs as well as established businessmen and the enterprises. So now new case studies should be devised and focus group activities should be done in the classrooms by the universities so that young entrepreneurs can hear from the entrepreneurs that have faced difficulty or they were forced to close down the businesses. And they need to be given scenarios and the case studies, and they need to work on the idea and they need to bring their inside out if they were into the shoes of that entrepreneur, what would their strategy be to get the business survive. So if we cannot change the curriculum, we can at least start focus group activities so that young entrepreneurs may learn from the experienced entrepreneurs.
Excellent point. Excellent point. It goes back to start where you are. If you know that it's difficult to change the curriculum in the time you need, what else can you do? You can do case studies. You could do focus groups. You could bring in industry experts. You can do things to infuse what is going on in the broader industry.
True. So now the discussion is getting more and more interesting, but we have short, time difference. So Sajda has some questions from you.
Moving towards the most active and fun part of the show. So moving towards my rapid fire round. Are you ready, John?
I am ready.
All right, here we go. What is the first thing you do when you wake up in the morning?
I have 10 things that I do in the morning. I have a habit tracker. I go to my habit tracker and I list off my meditation, my prayers. Okay. And so it's about, actually it's 20 things and it's all on my habit tracker. So I try to do that before I start my day. Okay.
All right. Okay. One piece of technology you cannot live without.
My phone is my personal assistant. I wake up, I look and say, what am I supposed to do today?
Exactly. All right. One good thing people do not know about you.
I'm shy.
Oh, really? That doesn't resemble.
Well, when I
your
was growing up, I didn't talk much. People thought but I'm basically shy. I've learned how to express myself as a part of the work that I do. But I basically don't talk much in most environments.
All right. But when it comes to work,
when I come to work, I become.
All right. Your favorite actor?
Esther Rolle. She comes from one of the islands that my family has come from. She's died. Before she died, I was able to talk to her. Esther Rolle.
Oh, okay. Okay. An opportunity you missed?
To become an actress. I told my dad I wanted to study drama, and he said, "You're a Black woman in America. You will learn business. No acting for you." So you can see I have drama all over me.
But John, I would interrupt. The actors are the celebrities, and you know the academicians are the academic celebrities. So Qtrix is bringing academic celebrities in front of the world. So you are a celebrity.
Okay.
Not being the actor, but an academician.
Thank you.
All right. Your biggest strength?
My biggest what?
Strength. Can you hear me?
No, I apologize. Is my computer, what was it?
What is your biggest strength?
My biggest, I didn't hear the last word.
That is strength. S-T-R-E.
Oh, my strength. Oh, got it. Okay. My biggest strength that people tell me is my enthusiasm.
Oh, wow.
They got you right. They got you right.
Wow.
All right. When you are most productive?
I'm most productive early mornings when I get up and after I've done my rituals or my habit tracker, I can knock out work. That's when I do my reading, any heavy writing is early in the mornings.
All right. And what scares you?
Truly what scares me is that the youth of the world will not have what they need for our future. That's why I do what I do. Whatever little role I can have to help, to support, to facilitate. I have a belief in the coming generation, but we just need more people like me. Your point earlier was that they're not investing in some of the youth businesses. We need more people to believe and to help to support the youth. So my biggest fear is that if they don't get what they need, they will tell us it will not be sustainable. Let's just leave it there.
Right.
Okay. If you can take one person to Mars with you, who would that be?
It is my 8-year-old granddaughter who is waiting for me to take her to school right now. I would take her to the moon with me if I went.
Yeah, we've been noticing during the show. She is roaming around you, I think.
But John, for going to Mars, you need to have a vacation. And I know you have a tough schedule, so I don't know if you are going to get the vacation.
Okay.
All right. What would you change about yourself if you got the chance?
I would have given myself more permission to explore more disciplines. I find that when I was, undergraduate, I was very, very focused, but I would take more time to understand the liberal arts, the poetry, the writing, as I advanced my career, I began to write more, but I wished I had taken more time in the beginning to write and read more. I'm a ferocious reader now, but if I had spent more time then, I think I would have been further along.
I wish you would get a such chance. I know as you have toughest schedule. All right. What is the biggest risk you have ever taken?
The biggest risk was starting a PhD program in economics. That was a risk. At the time I started, there were only 7 Black women in the country, in the US, who had PhDs in economics. And at undergraduate school, one of my professors just told me to get out of business, that I couldn't do it. Oh my gosh, if he could see me now. And that is what I tell young people. Nobody knows what's in your heart. Nobody knows what drives you. What truly drove me, and I liked economics from high school, what truly drove me is I couldn't understand why so few people had so much and so many people had so little. That has been a continuous driver. Why? I mean, not that I want the rich people to have less, but why can't we get those who don't have to have more? There's so much in the world. Why do so many people need so much? They can't die with it. When they die, they can't take it with them. So that was a driver for me. And even though some of the math was difficult for me, I persevered because I liked the problem solving. But I needed help when I got in my PhD program. It took me, I was 21, so I was driven right up until that. I was 21 when I started my PhD program, but because I had a business, I was working full-time in government, and I had a family, it took me 10 years to finish. But there you have that persistence, that resilience, that determination. No one knows that for you. So for someone to tell you what you can't do, they don't know what you have inside you. And what I found in my life is what's inside you that matters. The external stuff is not as important. And so I've answered your question. I am a doctorate. My PhD degree is 40 years old and more.
Wow.
Well, I must say that the risk that you took long before turned you into the actual Joe and Roe that we are, having today. The perfect personality.
And if the young entrepreneurs must be listening to John Rose, John has very rightly said that there are two factors that make you successful. One is that you should be resilient, and the other one is that you should be persistent. And if you have these two factors in you, there is no force in the world that will stop you to become a successful entrepreneur.
So I think here's
John, before coming to the end part of the show, I have a very important question. And basically, this is something what is required by the young entrepreneurs to understand. What are the hard skills and what are the soft skills that are needed right now in the current situation post COVID-19? What are the skills that young entrepreneurs should follow to become successful?
Okay, so what I want to say is whatever they are today, they will be changing and shifting. And so you need to stay close and aligned to what they are. We heard earlier that some digital data analytics, some digital skills, they are good to have, but the soft skills, the team building, the problem solving, the critical thinking, working with others are important because no one person can solve the problems that we have today. They're too complex, they're too big. So if you don't know how to work with someone else, if you can only work by yourself, to many corporations and to yourself as an entrepreneur, you will not be as successful. You need the skill of learning how to put that team together. Many investors, they don't buy only the entrepreneur, they buy the entrepreneurial team. They want to know that if something happens to the lead, that your finance person or your operations person or someone can pick it up, because what? Life happens. Something can happen to any one of us. If we have a team, then someone on the team hopefully can pick it up. So I say to the young folks, number one, don't stop reinventing yourself. Don't stop. Don't let anyone tell you you can't. Find a way. It might not be the same way as someone else, but you can be creative and find your own path and you can do it. And once you learn how to do it, bring others along, give back. Don't be the person who sucks in all the energy and don't give anything back to the community. And I will say this, because I mentioned this earlier. If someone is just feeding you with fish, just giving you funds so that you can sustain yourself, that is not going to be as sustainable as you learning how to fish yourself, learning how to run that business yourself, learning how to create jobs for yourself and for others and in your community, driving that economy, that local economy and that national economy. So, it used to be you would take one job and you would have it for life. The world has changed. Don't expect it unless it's your own job. And even if it's your own business, you want to harvest that business, sell it off and create another business. There are many serial entrepreneurs. They get a business to a certain extent and then they give it to someone else and they go do what they can do best, create another business and let someone else take it on. So find your own path. You might not do what I do or what other people do, but you can find something you can do. What's in your heart? What's in your soul? What drives you? What's your driving? What sustains you? What you would do even if someone didn't pay you? The work that I do today, the future of work and entrepreneurs for the underserved, I would do that no matter what, because it's part of my DNA, part of what has driven me from, I told you already, from high school. So find your why. We call that the why. Why are you doing what you do? If you can find your why, and I call it passion. When I taught entrepreneurship, I taught my students, find your passion. And why I taught them that is I found that if they could touch their passion. My work as the instructor, my work as the professor was less because they were so engaged. They wanted to do it. They wanted to do the work because it was work that they defined. So with that, I say, find yourself, work with yourself, and don't let anyone ever tell you what you can't do. Find a different way to do it. And that's all I have to say. I hope I've helped someone and inspired someone. I've given you what I have.
And John, the strategy that you just discussed, that entrepreneurs start new projects, nurture it, and then hand over the project to the other person. Tesla owner Elon Musk used to do follow this strategy. When he was young and he started the enterprise, he used to develop small projects and nurture it, and then hand it over on a minimum amount, whatever he charged, and he handed over those projects to other persons to start their businesses. So he used to follow this strategy. And yes, you are right. This is another thing that people can do to promote not only their businesses, but also give opportunity to other people to start businesses. Yes, you are right. So John, what is your feedback about Qtrix, the show, and this initiative of ILMA University? How do you feel?
I am honored. I am humbled. And thank you. I thank you both. I mean, it was exciting for me in the beginning. It was like, oh my gosh, I don't know what I could do, but you've made it easy. You made it easier. And I certainly hope it benefits the audience.
And see, people are generally bored of looking at the presentations. So this show provides an opportunity to have a live on discussion on a topic, so that we and you and the guests can exchange their ideas, and people can get to know about the questions that they have generally in their mind.
Yes, exactly. It was really, really, really good to have you in our show, John. As excited you were, you brought excitement in us as well throughout the show. And I hope the audience would have the same feelings about the show and listening to you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
being with us.
Now I have to do my grandmother duties and take my young granddaughter to school. She's been waiting. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Take care. Ladies and gentlemen, this was John Rose, and I hope you have understood all about the entrepreneurship, the young entrepreneurship, and the underserved, the opportunities and challenges that these people face. John was really helpful, and her book is going to be published soon. And I would urge all the people to buy that book and go through that book, so that we can know in detail about the entrepreneurship and the challenges and the underserved people. Ladies and gentlemen, this was today's show. Until next show, take care of yourself. Goodbye, and have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye-bye.